Lately, I've been having a lot of fun making country adjacent music, and so I thought it would be cool to walk through a production project I did for Love Angeles called Summer Love. It's kind of a mixture of like that band Camino indie pop vibe, but also kind of country, and it sounds like this.
I walk over to talk to you, I buy one, then a few. The music's playing, the words you're saying, yeah, I won't forget about you. Spent the whole night in each other's eyes, drunk on sweet tequila sunrise. It was summer love, not long enough. Yeah, I won't forget about you. Yeah, I won't forget about you.
But before we jump into that, I'm going to give myself a quick plug. If you're interested in making any music like this, I work as a freelance music producer and I work remotely on projects. So if you enjoyed the sound that I was able to get on this track and you think we would have fun working on a project together, go to the link in the description and we can book a call and chat about it. So I think one of the coolest parts of this track, I actually have this bus that's just stuff that's in the intro. So it sounds like this. So the main part of this intro is the underwater vibe that the drums have, which is actually just a rendered out drum beat that I played on Luke Holland Mixwave. Super basic beat, and I just filtered it out between like 60 and 300. It's just a really fun underwater vibe. And then that mixed with this tape loop. If I unfilter it. You wouldn't think that having these like two different drum beats layered on top of each other would work, but for some reason when you play the two of them together, you almost have these two different layers, one that's more of a throaty layer and one that's more of like a nasally layer. And then layered in a bunch of risers and sweeps. So there's a lot to unpack here. First, we have this top one, which is sort of this like reverse, almost tambourine sound. Let's get a little wisp. And you can see it's mainly a crash hit that I then just duplicated over here and reversed it. It looks like a lot of these ended up not making it into the final track, but you can see we were kind of playing with stuff. There's these three guys that ended up not making it into the final track. So we had this sort of sub drop. I think that ended up being too much. We had this guy here, which is more of like a almost like box drop. And then we had this one here. Which we ended up rendering out. You can see here, this actual track is just this sort of tonal screech. And then I threw Valhalla Supermassive on it. Far beyond what's in the track. And then I rendered that out into an audio file. And then just sort of like adjusted the fade into it because I think I wanted a long reverb tail sort of leading into it. So I took this sample, threw a reverb on it, rendered it out, brought that down as an audio file here, and then reversed it so that I could get like a fade in with that reverb tail. And then we just have this sweep. So get picky with your transition stuff because just these little layers or flutters are enough to make it feel like, okay, intro's over, now we're going into the verse.
One night in July.
Next, we have our acoustics. If you've watched this channel before, it's the same acoustic that I use for everything. It's this Yamaha FGX 830C. Not like some crazy high quality acoustic, but it gets the job done. I believe I recorded it with this, which is an AKG P170, which is just a super basic pencil condenser microphone, and I just kind of like put it here around the neck joint. I like double tracking acoustics. I'm not a big fan of like the one acoustic with two mics on it. I just don't like messing with phase stuff, so I end up just double tracking stuff most of the time. But yeah, just got two performances of that. Used a little bit of EQ to cut out some of the low end and some of the low mids. Honestly, as of late, Arvox has been my go-to acoustic guitar compressor. This vibe that works on acoustic and vocals. I don't know why, but I think I just end up throwing it as this basic compressor onto an acoustic guitar track while I'm recording, because sometimes when I'm recording acoustic guitar, I want to be able to hear myself a little bit better. But yeah, I just end up leaving it on the track when we go to the mixing and mastering stage. And then through a little bit of a high cut and a low cut, and together they sound like this. I would call this a very inoffensive guitar tone. Next, we have these electric guitars, which these are the main ones. I just wanted like a really beefy layer to, I don't know, change up the demo that we had. It was very country before, and I felt like having these like really intense, like low tuned, like almost metal guitars, it just added a vibe to it when we layered everything together. For these guys, I used my Les Paul with Fishman pickups in it, and then just tweaked a patch on Archetype Nolly, something that I thought was a little heavier. And then I just used a little bit of Pro C2. I just messed around with trying to make it like a limiter. In hindsight, I probably didn't need to do this. I just like leveling out. But then I put these 2 takes of that into a bus, did a little bit of EQ shaping just to tame some stuff, a little bit of brightness, a little bit of mid-cut. For some reason, a little bit of MoTT, like multiband compression, makes these style of guitars just work for me. I don't know why. If I turn it up. Like, I feel like it just brings it a little bit closer to the range that's comfortable for my ears. And then this is one of those like few plugins that has become like one of my go-tos in recent years, but it's the Cornef Audio Amplified Instrument Processor. I mainly use it for this insufferable mid-range filter. So that's what it's cutting out right now. Just makes it like really punchy and throaty. And then we have a bus of guitars that I call clean. Really, they're sort of light, crunchy stuff. We have a couple of alternate picking things. Which I think were just on my Strat. We also have this pluck. Also on my Strat. We have this guy here. I'm pretty sure I just used my Strat for everything that wasn't like the main chuggy part. And all these guys are using like various tones. I think this guy down here, I'm just using this Fender Blackface just to sort of vary it up. I feel like when you're choosing different amps for different guitar tones, it's important to like keep them varied up so that it doesn't sound like you're just using one amp for the whole thing. Like if you want a part to sort of stand out on its own, using a different amp can help that. But if you want it to kind of gel with like the larger picture, sometimes using the same amp and a different guitar can help. So like with this guy here, I'm also using like the Nolly archetype thing. I think I just switched to a different preset that was a little bit more Strat friendly, but I thought it would be cool if that grit level sort of matched these chuggy parts up here. And then similar, like this plucky part. I just wanted something that was really low, mid, heavy, and rhythmic. And then we have this guy hitting in the chorus. So when we layer all these together in the hook section, like it has that sort of indie pop vibe. And then we also have a little bit of a lead tone going on here. So kind of a whinier guitar tone. The way I was able to layer it up was, I think I just played this low octave here. Which again is just sort of this patch that I tweaked from Nolly archetype with a little bit of tal chorus and delay on it. But I didn't feel like it was popping out in the mix enough, so I duplicated it an octave up with the exact same settings, but I pitched the DI 1 octave up, so it sounds like this. So blending that octave up with this guy sounds like this. It almost has the effect of like one of those Electro Harmonix Pog pedals Like it just kind of adds this octave up that makes it punch out of the mix a little bit more. So all of these guitar layers together sound like this. And then for synth stuff, we didn't really have a whole lot going on. I just had this pad playing an arcade. Just to add a little bit of ambience in some of the sections where we didn't have this really dense electric guitar going on. The go-to, it was just acoustic textures. This first low C note tuned a couple of octaves up, and then bandpassed so that it's basically just this one frequency here in like the 300 to 500 range. If I turn it off, you can hear it takes up a lot of room, so I wanted to make sure the vocal popped out a lot more there. And then for bass, I've used this specific library on so many tracks, and it's so easy to program bass in MIDI because that's normally the thing that needs to be like doubling guitars or doubling chord progressions. Also, I feel like I just need to buy a jazz bass at some point, but whenever I'm needing something that's like really heavy, that's picked and has that frequency range, this is just able to get me what I need most of the time. And then running into Parallax with the Fat Clean preset. It's just the perfect amount of like scooped mid-range, but also still nasally enough to where it doesn't completely disappear in the mix. Yeah, and then a little bit of EQ and some compression. This was actually a pretty simple bass tone. Now we can look at our drums. Like I said before, I was using Mixed Wave Luke Holland for this. Just a great all-around kit. This is one of my main go-tos. And we're just playing this really stomp, clappy, country-adjacent beat, I guess. So it has this kind of stomp, clap vibe to it, but it also has variations going on the hi-hat. If you want to get stuff to sound good, really use the different articulations on the hi-hat and do your best to keep them from just sounding like one shots going over and over again. And also make sure that if you have like a snare hit on these like 16th note hi-hat patterns, mute the hi-hat whenever the snare lands on it, just so it sounds realistic. But yeah, this kit was honestly pretty spot on for the tone that we wanted. So I don't think I really did anything on the individual mics. I think I just ran it through like normal, a little bit of sidechain with the snare and the kick to this track, which is just like room mics and overheads and everything. And then we have a couple of shaker and tambourine layers. And those just add like a little bit of fun variety rhythmically when the drums are going to something that's a little bit more open. You still have this sort of 16th note vibe that's carrying it. And all those guys are running into a little bit of FET compression, a bit of clipping, and then some parallel compression here to sort of blend it in. Again, a lot of these drums already have like some baked in vibe to them, and I felt like it was already there most of the way, so I didn't really have to do a whole lot to it. Underneath that, we have our sound effects, which are kind of like the intro, just some transition stuff to make things hit a little bit harder. You can hear with these, they're a little bit more impacty. Like they're not like wisps, they actually have like a little bit of a thwack to them. It's because going into this section, we actually have a little bit more of a energy build, and so the wispier stuff will get lost, but sort of a smack will make it pop out a little bit more in the mix. And then didn't really do anything crazy for the vocals. I think for this, we just did a basic main lead vocal, some doubles, some harmonies, some O's, which are just triple tracked. So it's one left, one right, and one in the middle. So here's what the main vocal sounds like. Most of the chains are built around this.
You spent the whole night in each other's eyes.
You can hear they're pretty dry. There's not a whole lot of reverb on them in this song. I start out my vocal chains with like a little bit of like correction. So dynamic correction, I really like the most. So I'll set the high pass filter to where I want it to be. That's almost the most important thing for me when I'm mixing a vocal, is making sure the high pass filter is set where I want it to be, because how much a low end rumble you let into the rest of it, that kind of determines how well it's going to play with the rest of the chain. So I've set my high pass filter where I want it to be, a little bit higher than normal, and then some dynamic bands in the mid range that are a little bit like, when he's pushing a little bit more vocally, they need to be corrected.
You spent the whole night in each other's eyes.
And then a little bit of a top end boost. I was also okay with this being more of a grittier chain. So we have a virtual Neve going into some de-essing, into some Neve EQ, into a distressor.
You spent the whole night in each other's eyes.
And you can see this is 10-1 on this distressor. So I was okay with it being a little bit flatter. And then I really wanted to get those S's down. So I used another de-esser and then a tiny bit more compression to round it out.
You spent the whole night in each other's eyes.
And then at the end, whenever I'm doing like really aggressive chains like this, there's always some kind of frequency buildup that needs to get corrected, and I don't want to use something as crazy as like Mo-TT. So I'll just go in and add a couple of bands to be like, okay, here's this frequency that's kind of building up a little bit here, so let's try to correct it a little bit.
You spent the whole night in each other's eyes.
And this is also on 3 dB scaling, so if we go to regular fab filter, this is what it looks like.
You spent the whole night in each other's eyes.
And then I pretty much used that chain for all of the vocals in the track. Only difference is on the main vocal, I did also use a little bit of this pole tech, so boosted a little bit of 100 and some 16, and then a little bit of micro shift to make it wider. I really only care about the lead vocal being wider, not really anything else. So with that lead vocal, we have our doubles too.
You spent the whole night in each other's eyes.
And then we have our harmonies.
You spent the whole night in each other's eyes.
I was okay with them being a little bit more in the background with this one, just because with this track, it felt like having that one main vocal in like a country way is like kind of the main thing. We wanted to add a little bit of richness with all the other vocals, but didn't really care about like trying to get that big, full, like thick blend of background vocals and dubs. And then the background, we just have these guys, which are the only vocals that have like reverb on them in this track, I think. And so all these together sound like this.
Say goodbye, the music's playing, the words you're saying, yeah, I won't forget about you. Spent the whole night in each other's eyes, drunk on sweet tequila sunrise. It was summer love, not long enough, yeah, I won't forget about you. Oh, 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 oh. Yeah, I won't forget about you.
And so all these layers put together sound like this.
Music's playing, the words you're saying, yeah, I won't forget about you. Spent the whole night in each other's eyes, drunk on sweet tequila sunrise. It was summer love, not long enough, yeah, I won't forget about you. Yeah, I won't forget about you.
So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. If you want some free guitar tone stuff or other resources that I'm giving out, you can go to the Gumroad in the link in the description. And yeah, I will see you guys next week.